Hi, Kavi.
Hey, Paul, do you want to pause the recording and we start? Because I know we have to share this with. Are we dropping off and coming back again?
It's okay. It's Kyle.
Okay, I mean, it sounds like I've been saying their name wrong the whole time.
No, you're good. It's Simon.
All right. So great first game. We've got 42 people in the waiting room, and I'll just jump in. And then Joy, you just assist me in getting everyone into the room as I do the intro. And yeah, I think we're ready. It's for 2 minutes, and then we're ready to go. I like to start at 10:30 on the dot. So.
All right, we can hear everyone okay?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Can hear Kyle, can hear Mike, okay, good.
I
Okay.
see. So you can sort of give me
Yep.
direction. Should I mute? Usually I mute myself when I'm not talking. Should I avoid doing
There's
that?
no need. There's no need. Everyone else on the call is on mute,
Okay.
Yes.
except
Okay.
for the 4 of us. Even Joy is on mute as well.
I
So,
usually mute when I'm not talking to, so I'll
Yeah.
stay off mute.
Yeah, if you do that, I'll ask you to unmute,
Yeah.
Okay.
right? So just so you get that plug.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. All right. Let's let everyone in.
Let's see, give me 1 second here.
Good. All right. Hello, everyone. Good evening, everyone. And welcome to our maiden webinar for Research Bookmark. My name is Paul Chukwuma. I'm a community engagement lead at Research Bookmark. So what that means is basically I help grow and nurture the community, and I, get the honor of working with amazing user researchers every single day. So what we're going to do in this webinar is we're going to have a very free-flowing conversation with Yao, Kyle, and Mike, who are all very, very experienced user researchers. Yao is currently a user researcher at Bolt, which is a massive e-commerce company. Kyle is the director of user research strategy at Answer Labs. And if most of you already know the company Answer Lab, and Mike Oren is also the head of the design. He leads the design research practice at Klaviyo, and these are all amazing user researchers. We're just happy that they've been able to take some time out of their busy schedules to share some deep insights with us. And we'll just be looking into how do you know you're a user researcher? How do you start from self? How do you audit your skill sets? And how do you learn new and adapt your existing skills? So we just have a few rules. We'll have everyone on mute because this is a very open webinar. And if you have any questions, please feel free to type your questions in the chat. Our product lead at Research Bookmark, Cavendish, would actually be in the chat, and Joy as well will be in the chat looking at the questions and sending these questions to Yao throughout the webinar. And they will actually pick up some of these questions and answer them as we go on. So yeah, thank you all for coming, and I'm just gonna let Yao take it off from here.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I know some people, we are coming across the world here. I'm actually going to do a bit of square myself and just kind of see everyone in here. We have people from every continent. This is incredible and amazing, and we actually appreciate your time. We appreciate the love you're showing us by being here as well. So my name is Yao Adantor, as Paul mentioned. I'm a UX researcher at a company called Bolt. We're democratizing research. And I'm also the founder of Research Bookmark. Research Bookmark has a very simple but yet complex goal, is to serve UX researcher on their day-to-day kind of process or day-to-day work in life, right? Today, we're talking about growing as a UX researcher. And this is a subject that is never ending. As you start your career, as you're transitioning into your career, and as you're moving into other areas of UX research, we know that this is important. So we'll talk a bit about this today. I have two fantastic guests with me today, Kyle Kubas, and then Kyle and Mike Oren. Kyle is a UX strategy leader at Answer Lab. I'm going to let her introduce herself a bit more in a bit. And then Mike is a research director at Klaviyo, and they're also in the e-commerce space. So we're going to get to chat a bit about that as well. So Kyle, if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. My name is Kyle. I'm a director of UX strategy at Answer Lab, which is the largest independent agency in the United States focused only on UX research. So we don't do UX design, we don't do prototypes. I just live and breathe research every day. I have over 10 years of experience in the research space, and I'm really excited to talk today.
Very nice. Thank you for being here, Kyle.
All right, guess I'll go next. So I'm Mike Oren. I lead design research over at Klaviyo. It's an organization that helps creators, a lot of e-commerce companies, honestly, send email and SMS communications to their customers. And we're also building out a platform to help other technology partners build on top of our experience, and two exciting things there. So I've been building out the team there. It started with me in July. We're up to 7, and we're making a couple offers here to some people, and we're going to continue to grow that research practice here this year. And it's been fun. It's a fun rocket ship ride to work in a startup.
Super exciting. As you all heard, Mike is hiring. So if you are in the search, jump from Mike, right? He's hiring. So more UX researcher and more work for us. So we're gonna jump in here. But the first thing we want to know is kind of welcoming everyone is raise your hand if you're a UX researcher, you're thinking about going into UX research, you've done anything in the UX field. Let's see if people can use that reaction to raise their hand. I'm scrolling here, and it's an infinite scroll, really. Wow, people are keep coming in. Oh wow, we have a lot of UX researchers. It's incredible. Well, welcome. I hope we can keep your attention for a bit today. Wow, awesome. So we're going to talk about growth today. And in my personal story, I always find growth to start from self, right? So we say starting from self. And this specific point was really to talk about, when did it happen for you, right? When did you know you were going to become, or you are, a UX researcher? Though the title itself is a recent kind of happening, when did you know this is where you fit? So for me in particular, research or UX research is always related to understanding and knowledge. And I knew this very young, and there's actually a story that I always remember. And I think we must have been like maybe 8 or 9. And I think we were playing, just me and my friends were playing outside, and everyone was talking about what they wanted to do when they grew up. And people say engineering and this or that. And then when it got to me, I couldn't really answer, because even then, my whole thing was I wanted to know a lot of stuff, and there was no title for it. Right. But later on in life, I found my people, right? You guys are my people, talking about UX research, understanding, talking about knowing people, and so forth. So I'm gonna, ask Kyle and also Mike the same thing. So let's go to Kyle first. When did it happen for you? When did you know you are a UX researcher or researcher in general?
Well, I also feel like I have a childhood memory to share. So I think my earliest exposure to UX research was, there's this great children's book by Richard Scarry called What Do People Do All Day? And it's a lot of little animals who are plumbers and electricians and truck drivers, and they live in a little town. And that really appealed to me. What do people do all day, and how do they use technology, and what are they doing on their phones? So I think you could easily extrapolate that to a jobs to be done framework, right? Is not just what users want and need, but how digital products fit into people's lives. So I think I knew that I was interested in this just like you before I even knew it existed. But of course, I don't think UX existed when I was a child, or at least it wasn't called that. So really how I got into the field was through social science research. And I'm sure that there will be a lot of you on this call who are in an academic field or a related research field, and you're really thinking about how do you get into UX? And the skill sets are so analogous, right? So I actually started my career with a $13 an hour survey phone job. I worked in a caddy lab. If anyone knows what that is, it's computer assisted telephone interviewing. It was 13 bucks an hour. And I was like, this job is amazing. I had just been teaching English in South America for free for no money. So it seemed great. And so I actually had that sort of on the ground data collection of verbal administering a survey. And then I sort of moved from there to field data collection, and then managing field data collection, and then managing protocols and systems to train other data collectors for consistency, and really grew in project management and research operations. So that's how I came into UX research, was from an operational background, which I think really is no small part of how UX research is done today. I think a really key part of the development for me in the field, from that sort of initial just on the ground data collection to research design, which is where I am now, was really saying yes. So saying yes to new opportunities, finding gaps where things weren't being done but could be done, and also no job being too small. So I know that a lot of you have probably recruited your own participants, maybe even asked family and friends, or sent out those, does anyone have a next of kin who knows how to do this? And so I really think that those experiences are formative and a key part of how we grow in this field that's still nascent to a certain extent.
Absolutely. We're going to come back to that, but let's talk to Mike.
Yeah, I did not think about it at all when I was young. I was much more fidgeting with like mechanical things when I was young, and trying to invent like magnetic propulsion systems before I found out that it was already invented and there was this thing called a bullet train. It's a very naive young child. It wasn't until undergrad where I got exposed to user experience, which is still, I think, earlier than a lot of people. My undergrad had a human-computer interaction course that I was able to take, as well as a research experience for undergrad, where I was able to design code and then conduct the research on that experience for this basically gesture-driven icon system, and then went to a conference and presented that. So that then got me inspired to go to grad school. I got an internship during my master's at Google as a UX researcher. That was 2007, and then kind of kept forward in the research career from there, minus a short stint as more of an interaction designer prototyper. But really love kind of being able to merge the left brain and right brain in terms of being both analytical and creative, because that's really what I think it's about, as well as kind of actually interacting with people, versus if I stayed as kind of computer science focus, I would have just been a code monkey. Nothing against development, but I need my human interaction personally. And I also needed a job that could pay all the bills.
Well, key things there. So let's jump to Kyle really quick. Kyle, you mentioned interviewing people all day, like the phone calls. Interviewing being such a fundamental skill in UX research in general, what was it like doing it all day long, right, compared to what you do now?
Yeah, totally. Well, I have a lot of empathy for the UX researchers that I work with. Currently, Answer Lab has, I think, about 150 UX researchers. And when I started there at Answer Lab, we had about 15. So the growth has been exponential in the industry and in the company I work with. And it's, talking to people all day can be tiring. And I think that there are a few key pieces to think about there. One is about engagement, right? Is making a space as you moderate and in your interviews that is about connection, right? I think that's what brings so many of us to the field is, yeah, you mentioned, wanting to connect with other people. And so really leveraging that space to meet the present moment, just the moment that you're in, and be in that space with that person. I think it takes a lot of energy, but it's incredibly important for the session to be as impactful as possible. I also think it's really important to restore as a UX researcher. So it's really easy. We've had projects with the same researcher running 30 interviews, right? And that can be a lot. So it's important to think about how to bake in breaks in your schedule, how to bake in areas of opportunity for analysis breaks, what you want to wrap up at the end of each day, what your note-taking template should look like for the ease of synthesis, because you really want to be able to have two tracks in your mind going at the same time. One is leading and connecting the interview and really going on that journey with the user. And the other is being able to synthesize, because the number one part of our job, right, is to come up with these insights that are going to impact the business. They're going to move us forward in a direction. And so being able to have the energy for that also means being thoughtful about how to make space so that you have the energy for that.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm going to touch up on something there really quick. But Mike, coming from a little bit of development, prototyping, and so forth, how does that make you look at the field, right? How does that make you empathize with our cross-functional partners in the product teams?
Great question. I appreciate also talking about the empathy for cross-functional partners, because research, we don't leverage any hard power. It's all soft power and being able to influence our different partners. And so we can never come in and just be like, hey, we learned this thing about our customers, go make this change. They'll laugh at us, or they'll be like, oh, we have too many things, we won't go do that. So that's where it's important to understand kind of what's going on within their world and help present research in a way that they can go and action on. Because if research isn't being actioned on, it's sitting on a shelf somewhere, and then you might as well just be working in academia. Nothing, again, wrong with working in academia. I still teach myself, and I know you do as well, Yao. But there's a reason why I went to industry instead of academia, and that's to see how we can improve the lives of customers and people. And we can only improve the lives of people if we are having our recommendations actually actioned on. So understanding what's going to be possible, as well as pushing, like having that technical understanding. I can also push back against engineers who are naturally going to give excuses not to do it because it's just human nature. So helping them understand why this is actually a better experience for the people that we're trying to improve things for, as well as help them think through creative ways of solving that using the technology, helping kind of empower those developers to think more creatively. So
you use a term that I actually never heard. Can you go just a bit deeper to us on the hard power and soft power and how that's utilized when it comes to product teams?
Yeah, so like hard power is someone who has full authority, full decision making. Someone like, say, the head of product, the chief product officer. They have hard power. They can say, go and do this, or kind of head of engineering. Product managers have a mix of hard power and soft power because they do control what goes on the backlog. But at the end of the day, at most companies, they don't have the whole team directly reporting into them. So they have to use a mixture of hard and soft power in order to influence. Research, we don't go and produce the designs most of the time. Usually we have to depend on the designers to actually create those. We don't write the code, that's the engineers, and we don't control the backlog, that's usually the product manager. So the only thing we have is our ability to persuasively influence the people we work with. And the best way to do that is by taking the same skills that we have when we're talking to the people that we're trying to improve the lives of, and then apply that to our partners within an organization.
Yeah. Now we're going to jump into that a little deeper when we talk about auditing your skills. Now, Kyle, you mentioned, we talked about interviewing a bit. Now, with all of these modern tools that are coming out, being able to auto transcribe your whole interview and so forth, I actually had this question at work the other day. One of my colleagues were saying, "Hey, how do you want to run this interview? Note taking and such. How has that changed, right? If Dovetail or Condense or whatever tool I'm using is auto transcribing for me, as a researcher now, what do I focus on? What do I use that time that I used to, take notes and kind of answer? What do you do now with that time?"
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really interesting. And I think the other piece too of having worked with so many UX researchers across the years is that I still like to refer to everyone as their own special flower. So I don't think there's what's really cool about this field is that there isn't one right way to do everything, right? There's a lot of best practices and there's a lot of opportunities for innovation. I think as far as the note taking and what tools you leverage, it's kind of up to you of what your process is. From an agency perspective, our clients really want the insights as quickly as possible. So we don't always have time to go back and review the full transcripts, review the whole videos, really, brew our cup of tea and really jazz on it to a certain extent. It's really about making the process as efficient as possible. And so sometimes I think I used to play in bands years ago, and I used to always say, well, the demo is the best thing any band ever does because it's the first thought, it's the best thought, it's the purest form. And so I do think there is something about still making those notes and not just being completely off notes during an interview, because what jumps out at you at the time, I think that is powerful. And when you're reviewing a transcript days later, you may not have the same impact. So I guess my fold is it's great that there's all these tools and we shouldn't feel like that's the only way.
This is very interesting because that kind of allows, if you're here and you're transitioning or you're a UX researcher, you're here to how to grow as a researcher. And here are some of the most fundamental things, right? We talked about hard and soft power. We talked about being able to leverage tools, but still knowing what is the most important. How do I actually kind of build my process and so forth? Let's dive in. Oh, that's my cue. Someone turned me off. Let's dive in a bit. I hope you guys can still see me as I'm using this camera here. But let's dive in a bit to what skill set, right, helps the UX researcher grow. What is that? What kind of skill set the modern UX researcher is only so long, right? But what kind of skill set are helping UX researchers today, right, become efficient at their work? Kyle comes from a very different point of view as an agency, and we're in-house guys. We're also a little different. So let's take that from both of you as we dive into this question. What are some fundamental skill set you want to kind of grow as a UX researcher?
Since I'm spotlighted right now, I guess I'll take this one first. I would say that the thing that really differentiates someone who's focusing on research as kind of their core job versus now a lot of research is also democratized within organizations. You've got designers and product managers doing some on their own, is really that synthesis skill. That's one of the key things that researchers are just a lot more adept at. And when I say synthesis, it's not just clustering things into different themes, but it's really helping understand. So I have a sociology background as well as a computer science one. There's this concept of sociological imagination. That's how I like to kind of think of how we go and kind of infer the deeper why from things that we don't have the complete picture of. We have to take in that wider context beyond just what we're hearing from the people that we're interviewing and the people that we're observing in order to help our organizations that we're working with understand what's really the most important thing in order to improve the lives of the people that we're designing for.
Kyle?
Yeah, I think so. A key part of working at an agency that's very different from working in-house is our researchers are fielding research a lot, like 4, 5, 6, 10 times the amount of an in-house researcher. So our researchers are really practitioners. They are getting in there, writing research plans, moderating, doing the analysis, and then on to the next. When you work in-house, that is only a small fraction of your work. You need to, everything that Mike is talking about, working with product teams, understanding what their needs are, socializing the research after it's done, figuring out what can be changed and what can't, leveraging influence over time, considering how the UX practice could develop influence within your org to create better product experiences. These are all things that you'd be doing in-house. So when we think about and I really appreciate the democratization of research call out, is that I was talking with a client the other day who leads a research team at a Fortune 100 company, and he was saying, hey, I really think about how we do research in 4 different ways. The first is do it. Our researchers in-house do the research. The second is delegate it. Our researchers in-house partner with an agency to get that work done, and that frees them up to do other stuff. 3, democratize it. So to your point, Mike, around leveraging tools like user testing, like Dscout, more off-the-shelf solutions that you can onboard PMs how to do themselves or designers to get that work done, or ditch it. What do people want to find out that maybe isn't that important? There's things that that might be interesting, but may not move the business forward. And that is something that maybe needs to be taken off the table. So I would say that a key part in all of this is not just conducting UX research, but figuring out what UX research to conduct and why. And also to really, in every role I've ever had, rigorous and ruthless prioritization, which is a skill set that is, I think, the strongest in any business role.
Yes, so I hear 2 things. I hear synthesizing, which is really is just more than, like Mike said, putting things into teams and kind of presenting them on the deck. We essentially, this team, this company is hiring you for more, right? The human intelligence inside of yourself to bring something new to the table. And then we hear prioritization, which is one of the hardest things to do, because that comes with being able to partner with people on your team, and they have different goals, different KPIs than yourself. So this becomes a very bureaucratic thing in a positive way, right? Being able to deal with different people, different deadlines, and so forth. So that being said, how do you audit those skills? Even if we just talk about those 2 or expand, as a researcher, there comes a point in time where you're like, okay, I work in this kind of, in this industry, and we do this a lot. We do service a lot. So I've gotten really good at that. But we're starting to see other problems, and I need to kind of expand my skill. How do you audit your skills, right? How do you go, what do I know? How much of it do I know? How good am I at it? And how do I move forward with learning new things? Let's go with Mike first, this one.
So, I mean, if we're talking about auditing the skills versus kind of how we'd evaluate during an interview, a lot of that comes down to, there are different things, like the research ops community has some skill matrices that you can look at as a researcher and kind of weigh yourself against. Most like I'm sure Answer Lab has this, we have this even as a new research skill. We've got a different set of skill trees and what's expected for each level for the different kind of types of skills. So that's a great way to kind of have that. And there's the self-assessment, but it's also equally important to get other people to give you an assessment as well, because I mean, as researchers, we generally know about different cognitive biases. One of them is that people either tend to overrate or underrate themselves, depending upon their level of self-confidence, self-esteem. So that's why it's important to get that perspective. The other kind of gotcha with kind of any type of an audit is if you've never kind of seen what great looks like within the industry, if you haven't been going out to a bunch of conferences, if you haven't worked at an organization with really strong researchers, then you might not be aware of kind of how your work might not necessarily be on par with what best in classes within the industry. And that one's honestly the hardest one to solve, is making people aware of that best in class outside of sending them to different conferences, or putting them in touch with people within those companies that are doing it super well.
Yeah, great answer there. Kyle?
Yeah, building off of that, I totally agree with the self-assessment versus leveraging a peer. So I know that no one wants to, but you got to watch yourself moderate. You got to watch it, because you're going to see so much just in a self-assessment. Answer Lab has like a best moderation matrix that can help you. It's online, and there's a lot of, resources and tools for this kind of thing, but you got to bite the bullet and you got to watch it. And it's also really helpful to find a peer and watch each other. That's like a huge eye opener, and to do it at a consistent basis, 6 months, a year, that can be huge for helping improve moderation, which is such a critical component of insights creation, right? And then the other piece is exactly as Mike was saying, community. So again, at Answer Lab, we're an agency with UX researchers. So we have 150 researchers, and they're all talking to each other all the time. See, people are posting like wild on Slack. Hey, does anyone have ideas for this research plan? Can anyone point me to this? But you can create that for yourself too. It's so important to be involved in the UX research community. You might be at an org that's just has you. You might just be at an org where there's just a few of you, and maybe you never talk to each other because you're embedded in teams. But it's really important to connect with other UX practitioners and to stay aware of what's in the field. So as Mike mentioned, that can be a conference, but it can also be stuff like ADP list and UX coffee hours, and these opportunities to connect with UX mentors. People are really excited about the field right now, and there's a lot of opportunities there, as well as engaging in resources like learners, like Research Bookmark, like finding sort of these touch points where a lot of people are contributing, which helps us all upskill. So I would say it's total cringe, but you got to watch yourself. And then the other piece too is like, this is just like normal kind of management stuff, but I love 3-3, 3x3 feedback or reflection, which is 3 things that you feel proud of, accomplished, that you feel like you're strong in, and 3 things you want to focus on, find opportunities or level up in. And so, yeah, in your example, you're like, hey, I know I'm good at surveys, but I want to learn more about unmoderated usability sessions. How does that work? I'm going to take an online course about it, or I'm going to do a deep dive and come up with a game plan on that. So I think it's both ways. And then the last thing I'll just say is like, there's only so many hours in the day, but thinking about what is going on in the field through like podcasts, just following folks on LinkedIn is super helpful, and ongoing bias training, because like I need that like every 6 months. Like it's like they creep back in, and we need to really engage with bias training as we consider inclusive experiences, and also how we sort of safeguard our own studies from letting that creep in too much.
I think you and I talked about this a little yesterday in our meet and greet. Bias training, right? Let's dive into that a little bit. Why do they creep back in, and what are some of the top 2 things you can tell us about kind of refreshing that, making sure we are aware of those biases?
Yeah, so I would say they creep back in because we're humans. So I think like what is beautiful about our industry is we are not robots. Like I really do believe that UX cannot be automated, like these are human to human connections, and these are really important things. Like just to share a quick anecdote, we've done a lot of research with folks focusing on the digital divide. So people who have low technology skills, low access to internet, and having these people in sessions and seeing people feel so stressed because they can't complete a task in an app that we're asking them, for a benchmarking study, that they can't find it, and there's something wrong with them. And that's such a vulnerable human moment. And to have an empathic moderator who's with that person in the room, it is really important, not only for the psychological safety of the participant, but also to truly understand that user experience. And I think that's just something you can't like automate out. But to your point about bias, I think it can creep in the way that we moderate. It can creep in the way that we moderate and the way that we approach sessions. And it can also creep in when we're talking to product teams, right? Because there's so much bias around what the engineers already have built, what they think they can build, as well as like, I just read this great article by a research manager at Spotify talking about Western bias. So how do we think about markets like Pakistan, like the Philippines? And what if we come in saying users are like this because we already done US-based research, and that's just simply something we need to be very careful of as we move through each phase of the process.
Yeah, no, that's incredibly insightful, and Research Bookmark is trying to do a really good job of kind of leveling the playing field as we talked about yesterday. Mike, can you tell us a bit about some of your favorite conferences, maybe speakers or even books that you recommend in auditing or just scaling right up your kind of your skill set?
Yeah. So actually, the Advancing Research Conference was 2 weeks ago that Rosenfeld Media does. That one's generally fairly strong. Little biased because I helped select some of the speakers. Other ones that Kai is always a great one, but it is a lot more academic. Be aware of that. Epic sometimes gets criticized for also being very academic. Ironically, it was set up for anthropologists who are moving into corporate life and away from academia, but that criticism is still somewhat fair. But Epic is also a great one, especially if you want to go really deep into ethnographic or like deep qualitative research that's going to be more on the generative side versus the evaluative side of the spectrum. There aren't a lot of great conferences that I'm aware of for more mixed methods research still. And there's no conference that I'm aware of that's specialized in quantitative research methods. We as a field are still very heavily biased toward qual methods. And I think that's still something that we need to improve on. Even as businesses are getting better about accepting qualitative data, you can never move away from some quant consideration.
Absolutely. And I'll throw some strategy ones in there like UX Strat.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one too.
And yeah, and so forth. Those are very strategy based, generalists. You kind of get a bit of everything, but they also work towards kind of benchmarking yourself at, best in class per se, right? There are some interesting questions here. So let's just jump to one. This is Claire asking, Mike, can you talk a little more about how to offer those valuable insights on tighter timelines and deliverables? And have you used, and you have used for, and how have you used that, like your own advice, I guess, in an example?
Yeah, tight timeline's not a problem. It depends on the type of research though. So I guess one example is, I was working for a consumer electronic company, which I won't name right now, and I was given 1 week to recruit, come up with a research plan, and get results in terms of whether or not they should include a piece of hardware in the device. So in that case, it was what could actually be done within that timeline, and what would make the most sense in terms of getting something that we could be reasonably confident in. We didn't have a budget for any type of massive survey, so that meant we were going to be working more with qualitative. I had already established within the company a standing research participant pool that we could grab people from, and have actually a lot of times they were actually pre-scheduled. So in this case, they were that week, so I was able to leverage that. And then in terms of making sure we're able to get enough confidence, came up with a research method kind of based off of Amazon's working backward from the customer, where they have a press release. So we had a press release for this particular feature, had customers react to it, and we were able to track and count positive, negative sentiment changes to it, as well as present some alternative technology solutions that were also within the same space, but weren't currently being considered for the product. Ended up saving the company, I think it was 12 or something $million, because we learned just within that week, not worthwhile to go and add that particular piece of hardware to the device. But that was definitely more on the evaluative end. If you're talking on the generative side, it's a challenge. Outside of my best advice for kind of doing generative research faster is break it into smaller pieces and have interim shareouts. And that way it doesn't seem like it's as long, because they're getting nuggets of information along the way. And that's part of what Kyle was talking about earlier in terms of making sure you're being really strict with your prioritization, because what's most important to answer now versus what can be answered later.
Yeah, that's those are really great advice. Let me kind of do a room check here and see. And since a lot of transitioning questions are coming in, how many, raise your hand if you study UX research in school. Anyone that studied this subject called UX research in school? It's a trick question, because not a lot of people. Oh, wow. We're seeing some hands go up. That means these programs are popping up, Mike. I think we talked a bit about that as well. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So, here's an interesting thing here. The three of us come from different backgrounds. I mean, social backgrounds, come from psychology, sociology, and also Kyle comes from, a similar background as well. How have you guys found ways, and this may have been a long time ago, so you should be in the field for a while, adapting skills? We know that there are expert researchers that are not UX researchers. So when it comes to adapting skills, pre-existing skills, what is that like? What was that like for you, Kyle?
Yeah, well, I have a major in Latin American studies. So I'm not a sociologist, not a psychologist. I'm very much learned on the job. So I have a couple of examples. So I did teach English in Santiago, Chile after I graduated college. And I think there's a couple like really important parallels there. One is what engages people. So when you're in front of a room of 18 to 22-year-olds, and it's after lunch and they're learning English because they have to, but they really want to be construction managers in Chile. They're like not that excited about learning English. So how do you engage people? I think this is such a critical tool, not only in actual execution and fielding of UX research, but in stakeholder relationships. So what motivates your stakeholders? Like what motivates your cross-functional team? How do you engage them? That might look a lot of different ways. For some people, they just want the bullet points. For other people, I've heard of UX research teams creating like a mini museum or a comic book or like a deck of cards, like different ways to engage the insights and make them top of mind and relevant. So I think that a key piece is about engaging. And I think that for me was like, well, you're standing in front of a class of a bunch of people who maybe not that interested in what you have to say. How different is that from a research readout? I think it's pretty similar. And then the other thing I'll say is just like going back to playing music. When you play music and you're in a band with 3 other people, or the bands I was in, there was no main songwriter. So someone's doing something, you're like, yeah, that's cool. Okay, let's do more of that. Okay. And you're like, all 4 of you are working together on this thing. And like, I don't play drums, and I also don't know how to write code. Like, so I need the drummer and I need the person who writes the code in order to get the stuff done. So I think like really focusing on collaboration and the relationships with the people you work with is a critical part to Mike's point, to exerting influence to make the products better for people.
That's a great point. Mike, how about you?
Yeah, so my backgrounds are pretty closely related to computer science. Working with technology, you have to understand, so be able to talk to the engineers and be able to kind of help with that influence. And then sociology, psychology and sociology and anthropology are three of the fields that most of research methods have evolved out of. And there's still a lot of untapped methods within those fields that we can continue to leverage. So definitely, if you have any of those undergrads, you're already set, and even better if you have a master's or higher in any of those fields to be a very successful UX researcher. So definitely don't worry at all about transitioning there, especially if you, like me, I specialized when I did the PhD in sociology, specialized in methods and theory. So theory is actually something that we probably don't talk enough about in UX research anymore, because there are a lot of pieces that we can apply, but it's also something that we can't talk about to our partners and peers within organizations, because then their eyes will really glaze over, and you never want their eyes to glaze over. That's how you lose impact. So that's where all the kind of games and interactions and collaborations that Kyle talks about are really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk enough about collaborating. I often say UX is a team sport, and UX research within UX design, it's just essential, right? And you want those teammates there. You want to be able to achieve your goal ultimately. Let's jump to an interesting question. So Michaela here asks, if you consider yourself more aligned with quantitative research, does this mean there are fewer opportunities for these types of roles? So if you align yourself to, quantitative or qualitative, are you missing out on a market, right, potentially for your career? What do you guys think?
I'd say that there's a definite shortage of quantitative people within UX research right now. There's less kind of roles open specific to quantitative researchers, but if you apply to most UX research roles, as long as the team is more than a small, because sometimes if it's a really small size, they can't sustain someone who's more of a specialist. But even with my team of 7 right now, I made sure one of the hires was a quant specialist, so master's in statistics. Was super excited when I found her, because I'm like, diamond in the rough, it's really hard to find. Qual researchers, again, there's no shortage of need for qualitative researchers, and most of them are. Most of the roles out there, because there are more people in that field in terms of research, they tend toward that. The really sweet spot is if you can do both fairly well, because that's what hiring managers get super excited about. I see Kyle nodding too, so I'll hand it over to her.
Yeah, plus one to that, I really believe that the future is mixed methods. I mean, we all want it, all the clients want it, all of us want it. But I don't, that's not to say that if you have a specific skill set here, you're screwed or something. I think that what's important is to be curious and to be interested in how the other side works. And I'll tell you, talking about adapting skills and getting new skills, a lot of my job is working in a small business is thinking about how we can grow our team, what it looks like to grow accounts, to grow a small business from when I started Answer Lab 35 people to now over 250 people, and to be part of that growth and in those conversations. And you can't be afraid of numbers. So I would just say, it's not you have to have the master's in data science to be a qual researcher or to be a mixed methods researcher, but you have to be interested in how they connect with each other, because at the end of the day, it's very rare for a company to make big product decisions without the numbers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love that line. You have to be curious, right? I mean, this should be a natural skill set for a researcher anyhow, but if the future is mixed method, you definitely have to be curious. Let's talk a bit about that future. What is in the future for UX researchers, right? Kyle, this question is very much attached to your business goals for you guys as well, because you have to be able to see the future. And then Mike, within an organization, what should researchers not even be able to do, but what is that future for UX research as a career as well? Let's start from Kyle.
Well, the future is domination. I mean, we do not see. So Mike was just talking about like, soft power. I want hard power. Like, I think that the best products are going to be made with UX researchers at the helm. And we are not there yet. We are not in a place where there are VPs of research, where there are UX folks in the C-suite. And we need to get there, because that is the voice of the user, and that is creating the experiences that we want people to have in the world, or that they want to have, right? So I think the future and where the industry is growing and what we want is to exert more business influence. So we want to be higher up in the org charts. The second piece I would say is that we just see such a tremendous growth thinking about UX as a partner and not a submissive. So what does it look like? Again, that's kind of about organizational power, but what does it look like for UX researchers to be seen as an integral component of product decisions, as opposed to like, oh yeah, cool, thanks for that. We really think about exerting influence, and like the CEO of my company just put out this article that's about the future of how people really are engaging with agencies like Answer Lab is about robust partnerships that drive business impact, not just doing like a one-off little project every now and then. It's really about driving the strategy of your business, leveraging UX research. And I think that that's what we all want. That's what I see the future in, 10, 15 years.
Absolutely. Well, that's fantastic. We can dive into that all day. Mike?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting time, honestly, because on the one hand, we've got these trends towards democratization of research, and we have like researchers who have been at one point, I think, maybe it was 2012 or 2014 or something, the head of research over at Facebook, now Meta, said that they were expecting research to go away within the industry. That everybody could do research, and that there'd be no need for our practice. It was especially interesting because they generally have some fairly good researchers over there. You will see more of that within companies where they haven't been exposed to great research, where they've had designers who took like they went to design school, and then they're like, oh, I can go interview someone and get feedback, and that's research. Or the PM will have learned something because now they teach design thinking within most MBA programs. They'll have taken a design thinking class and be like, I can go do design thinking and go do research, because to them it's just going and interviewing, because that's the visible part of research. The invisible part, the portion that's the heavy synthesis, the inference, and getting at that deeper why, all the different activities and quantitative methods, and I also have a lot of different qualitative methods outside of just interviewing, are things that are kind of black boxes to them, and they don't necessarily understand until they start working with researchers. So actually Klaviyo, before I got hired, PMs, designers, customer service people, data scientists were all, and they're continuing to talk to customers and do research. But the ones who have now interacted with people on my team and have seen kind of what an actual kind of dedicated researcher can bring are now asking for more support. So while before we were leaving kind of the product level research to those different product pods, they're now asking us to start allocating more researchers to that work, instead of just coaching them and then doing, we had been doing more of the strategic research across multiple pods and trying to work a quarter ahead. So just by showing them like, this is what we can bring, that's inviting us in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we feel the same, right? Naturally, ideas kind of stem out of this energy where researchers are not present, right? When someone has a deep-rooted idea solving a problem, they just want to go solve it first. But then when you want to compete in the Fortune 500 level, you need research to kind of crack through. And that's when we're seeing more and more companies welcoming research teams as a whole, which is really exciting. Klaviyo, Bolt, Answer Lab research being their business, really incredible stuff to see. Let me jump to one last question before we start kind of doing our outro here. So we have a question from Gene. What are some different career routes for UX research? I know some go through a manager, an admin, but what are some other things I can do, right? If I don't want to manage people or, through that route, what are some things you can specialize in and still be able to see growth in your career? Let's start with Kyle.
Yeah, so, speaking to kind of from the agency perspective, and I'll leave it to Mike to speak to the in-house perspective. But here we have, you can be a UX researcher and you can continue to be an IC. So an IC is an independent contributor. That's what's really exciting about the foundation that Google has laid in the industry, is that you can grow your career and you can make pretty good salary and be happy as an IC forever. You shouldn't be forced into management if that's not of interest to you. So I think that one opportunity is to stay an IC and continue to up-level your skills to, and so they're called principal researchers. We see that job title at other companies as well. And these are folks who are really masters of their craft. And so not only do they typically exert influence on the projects that they do, but they also maybe help guide best practices of the overall team, and then, ideally contribute to the community as well. So there's a principal IC component. There's also, as you noted, research manager. So that is typically like a people manager of researchers, helping people, mentoring them, helping them grow their skill sets, ensuring that they're working at the quality and expectation that is required. And then at Answer Lab, we also have research directors, and that's also a very common role in most places. And that also is more of a how to exert influence across other departments, thinking about how research fits into the org in general, as well as ensuring consistency across different teams. So like somewhere like Meta, they have like a lot of research directors. Somewhere like Answer Lab, we have like 4 right now. And they each oversee a vertical and sort of think strategically about initiatives related to that. And then the last role I would just say is I'm in strategy. And what that means from my side is UX strategy is kind of like a weird, can mean a lot of different things. In my role, it really means designing research. So I design research to meet client objectives, to answer their business questions. And then it's actually like a research project that you sell, that we sign a contract about, that's has a scope. And in that way, then we also manage their account, really. So anytime that they want something else or see an opportunity to iterate or have a problem, sort of we're there to partner with them. And then the really cool part is that you get to see everything that company is doing with you as your partner. And then you're able to say, hey, I think, here are your overarching goals. Let's talk about what this could look like from a high level perspective. And then also, because of the agency part, I work with a portfolio of 12 clients, and my company works with many, many, many more clients than that, many more accounts. And so the opportunity to say, hey, I just did this cool project for this other client actually seems like it might be a really good fit here, and that might be of interest to you. And so being able to take to go from the ground and see above and see everything that's happening and consider how to strategically move from there. So I would say this sort of manager, director role, the IC piece, and then the strategy piece. But yeah, I'm interested to hear Mike's thoughts.
Very, very cool. There's a lot of route to go. And as we see the industry kind of open up, there will be more. I imagine there will be more, some things we can even think of now, right? Paul, I know you wanted to do a few live questions. Do we have anyone ready for that?
Yes, I actually just saw a fantastic question from a student, Ari Goodman. Okay. And what I'll do, Ari, is I'll spotlight you and then I'll ask you to go off mute so you can ask a question. I think we'll just be able to take one question and maybe one more. Okay. Sorry to put you on the spot, Ari. So just get comfortable and then go ahead.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, Hi, sorry, I was in the library on like the quiet spot. So nice to meet you all. My name is Ari. I'm actually studying user experience research at my university. And I'd love to know more about like what's something that you didn't know before coming into the industry that you wish someone had told you. I'm pretty new to all of this, so I'd love to hear your advice on that.
I can just go quickly, but I'm really gonna leave more time for two guest speakers. For me, it's conduct more research, get involved for free or paid, but get into doing more research, right? Whatever that means, interviewing, writing surveys, that is the best portfolio you can build for yourself, is doing something real. There are endless ideas and products out there, and there is such a need for UX research. They don't know it, but you can bring that up. So I'll say finding more ways to kind of create real research for yourself and helping people output that will be something. There was no UX research when I was in school, but that would be the advice I would give, right? More practice, the better. How about you, Mike?
Yeah, got a few different answers, but I think the one that I'll go with is when you're creating your report, really focusing on the things that are going to be impactful and things that are going to either be really new to the audience that you're presenting it to, so that especially if you're doing it first, because it's easy for people to say, hey, we already knew that. But some of that is hindsight bias, which is one of the reasons why you have to make sure that you're kind of crafting in a way where it's harder for them to try to say that. But the other thing is like too many research reports out there start with methods and participants. And while we as researchers may care, our audience doesn't care. And if they do, that's actually the people who ask about those, or how you know those are the people you need to follow up on, because those are the people who don't trust your results. So that's the number one reason to keep the method and participants in your appendix instead of putting it up front. Get to the meat of your presentation first and learn more about kind of who you need to follow up with.
Mine's really simple. Learn how to run a business meeting. Running a meeting is the most important skill you'll ever have. Make an agenda. Make sure everyone has the agenda. Keep the time. Make sure to leave time for next steps. I can't even tell you how useless meetings are. You'll find out soon enough. The only good meetings are well-run meetings. Just read 3 articles on Harvard Business Review about how to run a meeting.
That's really great advice. And I'll add one thing, right? Apply to be a volunteer at Research Bookmark. We're conducting research on researchers and real life research, and it has gotten a lot of people that come through just in the market right away. So that's also an opportunity. I know we're going towards the end here. We passed a little bit. I know Kavenish is looking to talk to us a bit about RB, and then we'll close out here with our speakers. Kavi, are you still muted? Okay. Nope, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I had my mic on mute. So can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Great. So hi everyone, and I'm really super excited about the attendance today. I'm just gonna talk a little bit about RB. So I'm kind of one of the founding teams for Research Bookmark. And when we started it back in 2020, our plan was to really solve problems that we were experiencing ourselves as UX researchers. So once we actually did that and we realized we're not the only ones experiencing the problem, we shared the platform with other UX professionals all over the world. And our journey to help and impact has only grown stronger since then, right? So fast tracking to now, we run Research Bookmark with 2 goals in mind. So one is really centralizing UX research resources to make exploration, seeking, and consuming information much easier, because as much as we know, like information is actually out there, but it's really scattered, right? So the journey of really exploring and consuming it is a bit overwhelming for a lot of people. So we kind of try and make that experience a bit much easier. And our second goal is to really democratize access to quality UX research resources for all UX professionals globally. So I'm a UX researcher located in Africa, specifically Kenya, And we did an experiment where we were trying to gauge whether we actually get access to the same type of content as UX researchers like in the States and other places. And we realized there was a bit of a discrepancy. So one of our missions was to really democratize access and kind of assure equality of access to resources, but also not only resources, but opportunities, right? So we continue to look out for UX researchers every day as per our mission. And currently what we're doing is driving to understand what's your day-to-day work life as a UX researcher and seeing how we can make it not only easier, but also enjoyable as well. Aside from that, we also offer like volunteer and internship opportunities to people who are looking to explore the UX research space and hopefully have them gain some level of experience enough to be able to, be able to join companies that they are passionate about, and be able to get like job opportunities and jobs easily as well. So there's a lot that we're actually doing right now, and we continuously share our resources and what we're up to, and also the opportunities that we ourselves are creating and our partners are also creating in the community, that we're going to be sharing the link in the chats in a few. So if you're interested in kind of keeping up to date with what we're doing, but also having access to great connections, mentorship, and also opportunities, be sure to join our community page on LinkedIn. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Cav. Cav is our product manager on Research Bookmark, and you'll be seeing and hearing more from her as well. Kyle, Mike, I can't thank you enough for being part of our first kind of webinar here. I think it's the organic that I was aiming for, kind of getting in and not being too structured and kind of giving people what we actually go through as researchers. So any last word from you both? Kind of you're open to talk to us as well.
Let Kyle go first.
All right.
I accidentally muted myself. No, I would just say, like, listen, the field needs new people, and they need people from different backgrounds. Like, you are here, we want you here, and I know it's really hard to get your first UX job, okay? So, like, just remember, it's okay, it takes time. Remember to, as Yao was saying, like, do some free stuff you might have to in order to pull together your portfolio. Continue to engage with UX researchers to find opportunities for some of the entry level. There's like associate opportunities, junior opportunities, analyst opportunities. There's a lot more of them now than there used to be. But I just want to say, like, we want you here, and we know that there are still barriers to entry, and that's something that all of our teams are committed to trying to break down.
I will echo all of that, and I will also add that the other thing to keep in mind is getting rejected for a job you shouldn't reflect that as like something against yourself or your skill set. Oftentimes it's just what the team needs at that particular time. I've turned down plenty of really great people just because they weren't what the organization needed at that particular time in our development. So.
And again, I appreciate you both. Thank you to the RB team for this long journey of reaching out to Kyle and Mike and other speakers that we're going to have here today. And, we wish you guys the best. You're part of the RB family now. So you'll see us running around in different places. And thank you again, everyone, for showing up. We really appreciate it. I know this is recorded and is going to be in the Research Bookmark community and so forth as well. Thank you. You guys have a great night, great morning, wherever you may be.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you so much for coming.